Have you ever felt the weight of silence in your own home and wondered if this is all that's left? If you're living alone in your later years, you might recognize that hollow feeling, that sense that somehow life has moved on without you. But what if I told you that this very moment, this solitude you're experiencing, isn't the end of your story, but the beginning of something you never expected? What if the quietest chapter of your life could become the most meaningful one? Today, we're going to explore 7 guides that can transform your experience of living alone from something that feels like loneliness into something that feels like freedom. These aren't just ideas or theories, they're drawn from real people, individuals in their 70s, 80s, and beyond, who discovered that solitude doesn't have to mean suffering. In fact, many of them will tell you it became their greatest teacher. Living alone after 70 can feel like you've been forgotten. Your children are busy with their own lives. Friends have moved away or passed on. The partner you shared decades with may no longer be beside you. The silence in your home can feel so heavy that it almost echoes. But here's what those who've walked this path before you have learned, that silence isn't empty. It's actually full of possibility. It's a blank canvas waiting for you to paint something beautiful, something uniquely yours. Let's start with the first guide, rediscovering yourself. This might sound strange at first. After all, you've lived with yourself for 70, 80, maybe even 90 years. How could you not know who you are? But think about it honestly for a moment. How many years did you spend being someone's spouse, someone's parent, someone's caregiver? How long has it been since you did something simply because you wanted to, not because someone else needed you to? There was a man named Harold, 78 years old, who lived alone after his wife passed. For the first year, he ate dinner, standing at the kitchen counter, barely tasting his food, rushing through meals as if they were a chore to finish. One evening, something shifted in him. He set the table properly, just for himself. He lit a candle, poured himself a glass of wine, and sat down to eat slowly, deliberately. He told me later that it was the first time in a year he actually tasted his food. More importantly, it was the first time he felt like he mattered, even when no one else was watching. That's what rediscovering yourself looks like. It's creating small rituals that honor who you are. Maybe it's brewing your coffee exactly the way you like it, sitting down to drink it instead of gulping it down. Maybe it's playing music you love, not what your spouse preferred or what your children wanted to hear, but what makes your heart sing. Perhaps it's speaking kindly to yourself in the mirror instead of criticizing the lines and wrinkles that life has etched into your face. When you live alone, your home becomes your closest companion. This brings us to our second guide, creating a home that nurtures your spirit. Look around your living space right now. Does it feel alive? Or does it feel frozen in time? Are there photographs on the walls that bring you pain instead of comfort? Is the furniture arranged exactly as it was when someone else lived there with you, as if you're preserving a museum to the past? A woman named Eleanor, 83, told me she couldn't bear to look at her living room anymore because everything in it reminded her of her late husband. Every chair, every picture, every corner held a memory that hurt. One weekend, she did something brave. She rearranged everything. She moved the couch to face the window instead of the television. She replaced the painful photographs with pictures of her grandchildren laughing. She bought a small plant and placed it where she could see it every morning. These weren't huge changes, but they transformed her space from a place of grief into a place of possibility. Your home should feel like a garden of peace, not a graveyard of memories. This doesn't mean erasing the past or pretending it didn't happen. It means making room for the present, for the person you are now. Add some color to your walls if they feel too dull. Open the curtains and let light flood in. Bring sound into your space, whether that's music, an audiobook, or even the gentle noise of a small fountain. Silence can be peaceful, but unbroken silence can also be suffocating. Now, you might be thinking, that's all well and good, but what do I actually do with my time? This is where our third guide becomes essential, filling your days with purpose. Notice I didn't say filling your days with busyness or distraction. Purpose is different. Purpose means doing things that matter to you, things that give your days meaning and structure. There's a gentleman named George, 81, who spent the first 2 years of living alone simply waiting, waiting for his children to call, waiting for the weekend, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Then one day he picked up a piece of wood and started carving. He'd done a bit of woodworking in his younger years but had abandoned it for decades. That first carving was a simple bird, rough and imperfect. But as he worked, something changed. He wasn't waiting anymore. He was creating. Purpose doesn't have to be grand or impressive. It can be tending a small garden, even if it's just herbs on a windowsill. It can be volunteering once a week at a local library or community centre. It can be learning something new, taking up watercolour painting, or writing down your life stories for your grandchildren. The activity itself matters less than the fact that it gives your days intention. When you have something to look forward to, something that needs your attention and care, you stop feeling like you're just passing time until the end. You start feeling alive again. This brings us naturally to our fourth guide: building emotional strength through acceptance. I know that word, acceptance, can sound passive, like giving up or settling. But real acceptance is actually one of the most powerful things you can do. It doesn't mean you like everything that's happened in your life. It means you stop fighting against reality and instead work with it. Ruth was 82 when she finally accepted that her daughter wasn't going to call as often as Ruth wanted. For years, Ruth had spent every Sunday afternoon waiting by the phone, feeling hurt and rejected when the call didn't come. One Sunday, she made a decision. She stopped waiting. She picked up a set of watercolours she'd bought years ago and never opened. She spent that Sunday afternoon painting, badly at first, but joyfully. When her daughter did call the following week, Ruth felt different. She wasn't angry or resentful. She was simply glad to hear from her. Acceptance means releasing the need to understand why people do what they do, why your children are too busy, why friends have drifted away, why life didn't turn out the way you planned. When you stop wrestling with these questions, you free up an enormous amount of emotional energy. That energy can then flow toward gratitude, toward appreciating what you do have instead of mourning what you've lost. Our fifth guide is about rediscovering joy in small moments. After 70, joy doesn't usually arrive in big, dramatic packages. It comes quietly, in small, easy-to-miss moments. The warmth of sunlight on your face as you sit by the window, the satisfaction of a well-made cup of tea, the pleasure of a favourite book you're reading for the third time because it brings you comfort, the sound of birds singing outside your door. These moments have always been there, but when life is busy and full of people and obligations, we rush past them without noticing. Solitude gives you the gift of presence, the ability to slow down enough to actually experience these small joys. But you have to train yourself to notice them. You have to cultivate awareness. Try this tonight. Before you go to bed, think of 3 small moments from your day that brought you even a tiny spark of pleasure. Maybe it was the way your coffee tasted this morning. Maybe it was a kind word from a grocery store clerk. Maybe it was the softness of your favorite sweater. Write them down if you like, or just hold them in your mind. This simple practice rewires your brain to look for joy instead of dwelling on what's missing. The sixth guide addresses something many of us struggle with: reconnecting with the world in small, brave ways. When you've been living alone for a while, it's easy to become invisible. You stop going places because it feels awkward to go alone. You stop reaching out to people because you don't want to be a burden. Slowly, without quite realizing it, you build walls around yourself. Breaking down those walls doesn't require grand gestures. It requires small acts of courage. Ellen had lived alone for 7 years without making a single new friend. She'd convinced herself she was too old, that people wouldn't want to spend time with her. Then she saw a flyer for a book club at her local library. For 2 weeks, she talked herself in and out of going. Finally, on the 3rd meeting, she walked through the door. She was terrified, but within 20 minutes, she was laughing at something another woman said, and that laughter felt like coming back to life. Start small. Say hello to your neighbours when you see them, instead of hurrying past. Strike up a conversation with someone in the checkout line at the grocery store. Join a class, any class, whether it's gentle exercise, art, or gardening. Attend a community event, even if you go alone. Yes, it feels vulnerable and uncomfortable at first, but each small connection reminds you that you belong to this world, that you still have something to offer and something to receive. Finally, we arrive at the seventh guide, and perhaps the most important one: making peace with yourself. So much of what we call loneliness isn't really about being alone. It's about being uncomfortable in our own company. It's about carrying regrets, guilt, and disappointments that we've never quite resolved. Frank was 85 when he started writing letters he never intended to send. Letters to people he felt he'd wronged. Letters to himself at different ages. Letters to the person he wished he'd been. He didn't mail these letters. That wasn't the point. The point was to finally speak the words that had been trapped inside him for decades, to forgive himself for being human, for making mistakes, for not being perfect. Making peace with yourself means looking at your life honestly, acknowledging both your failures and your successes, and deciding that you are worthy of kindness and compassion, regardless of what you did or didn't do. It means forgiving yourself for the parent you weren't always able to be, for the spouse who sometimes fell short, for the friend who could have done better. It means recognizing that you did the best you could with what you knew and what you had at the time. This kind of self-forgiveness isn't self-indulgent. It's essential. Because until you make peace with yourself, you'll always be running from your own company, always trying to distract yourself from the discomfort of your own thoughts. But when you finally extend compassion to yourself, something remarkable happens. That heavy silence in your home becomes peaceful instead of painful. That solitude becomes a sanctuary. Let me bring all 7 guides together now so you can see how they work as a whole. Rediscovering yourself gives you permission to prioritize your own needs and desires. Creating a nurturing home gives you a physical space that supports your emotional well-being. Filling your days with purpose gives you structure and meaning. Building emotional strength through acceptance frees you from the exhausting work of fighting reality. Rediscovering joy in small moments trains your mind to find pleasure in the everyday. Reconnecting with the world reminds you that you're still part of something larger. And making peace with yourself allows you to finally enjoy your own company. These guides don't promise that living alone will always be easy or that you'll never feel lonely. Some days will still be hard. Some evenings will still feel long. But what these guides offer is a path from mere survival to actual thriving, from enduring your solitude to embracing it as a precious opportunity. You've lived long enough to know that life doesn't always give us what we want. But you've also lived long enough to know that we're far more resilient than we think we are. You've survived losses and disappointments that would have broken your younger self. You've adapted to changes you never saw coming. That same strength that carried you through all those years is still within you now, waiting to carry you forward. Living alone in your later years isn't a tragedy. It's not a punishment or a sign that you've been forgotten or that your life is over. It's actually an invitation, perhaps the most profound invitation you'll ever receive. An invitation to finally meet yourself fully, to discover who you are when all the roles and responsibilities fall away. To find out what brings you joy when no one else is watching or judging. So here's what I want you to do. Choose just one of these 7 guides, whichever one resonated most strongly with you as you've been listening. Maybe it's rearranging a room in your home. Maybe it's starting a simple daily ritual. Maybe it's joining one activity in your community. Maybe it's writing that letter of forgiveness to yourself. Choose one and commit to it this week. Not someday, not eventually, but this week. Take one small step toward transforming your solitude from something you endure into something you embrace. And if you found value in what we've talked about today, share this message with someone else who might be living alone and struggling. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is let another person know they're not the only one feeling this way, that there's a path forward, that it's possible to find peace and even joy in the quietest seasons of life. Your story, your journey through solitude, might be exactly what gives someone else the courage to begin their own transformation. Living alone doesn't mean living without purpose, without joy, or without meaning. It simply means learning to find those things within yourself rather than depending on others to provide them. And that, my friend, is perhaps the greatest freedom of all.